Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I am Ryan Wormeli, joined for our Friday show by Pat Fitzmaurice and by Derek Brown. Just so everybody knows, a little housekeeping, we are recording this on Thursday due to some scheduling stuff. So if anything crazy happened Thursday Night Football that we are not, reacting to or talking about, that's why. It's because it hasn't happened yet for us. We are coming to you in the future on Friday. Quick reminder for everyone, all of our weekly consensus rankings and tiers can be found at fantasypros.com/rankings. And also a reminder, if you're juggling multiple fantasy football teams and feeling overwhelmed, Fantasy Pros will help you simplify things. With Fantasy Pros Multi-League Assistant, you can see the latest news, notes, and rankings for every single player across all your teams. It's all in one spot, making your path to victory clearer and easier. Dive in and let us help you dominate all your leagues with the Multi-League Assistant at fantasypros.com/myplaybook or on the Fantasy Football My Playbook app. Debro, on the Thursday show, Fitz, Erickson, and I were talking a bit about just kind of the state of our teams at this point in the season as we enter Week 12. How are your teams across the board looking?
Doing pretty good, guys. I got a few first place teams. I got a few top 3 teams looking at first round buys. Bunch of the dynasty squads. Our own content league. I'm currently retooling and rebuilding, working some trades. You can never have too much JJ McCarthy exposure. So I honestly can't be mad. It's a good time of year.
I was going to say, you're saying you're having a pretty good season. You are in last place in that dynasty league, to point out. And Fitz is in 10th. So I'm in third. Who's track?
Okay, so you're not in first?
No, I am not in first.
Okay.
I am in third. Listen, just got to make the playoffs, unlike you guys.
Okay.
So,
okay.
All right, let's jump into the slate of games here for Week 12. A bunch of teams on bye, so fewer matchups here than usual. Let's start with Vikings at Bears. Signs of life from Chicago, kind of, in Week 11. Fitz, what did we learn about the Bears for fantasy purposes in their first game post Shane Waldron?
Yeah, I would not have big expectations for this passing game going forward. They really sort of put the training wheels back on Caleb Williams. It was just a scaled down passing game, nothing downfield at all. Just have Caleb get the ball out of his hands quickly. To be honest, it looked a lot like the Luke Getsy offense when he was the Bears offensive coordinator, just like really quick throws, everything close to the line of scrimmage, nothing downfield at all. So, it made the numbers look better for Caleb Williams. He completed more than 70% of his throws in that game. But, man, there was just it was the classic horizontal passing attack. Equal effort with the wide receivers. All of DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, and Rome Odunze had between 7 and 10 targets. Caleb did run more aggressively. They had some designed runs in there. 9 carries for 70 yards. So maybe he's going to offer a little more rushing value going forward, but just, I don't know, like it was not exactly a breakout game for the Chicago passing attack.
What did you think watching this game, Debro?
A lot of the same things Fitzy highlighted here. When I went through the numbers for the primer, I mean, it was everything that Fitzy just outlined. Like, you're looking at weeks 1 through 10. Caleb's ADOT dropped from 8.6 to 6.7. He had the 8th fastest time to throw. He had 4 designed runs in that game, which if you look over the entirety of the rest of the season, he only had 3 rest of the season. So this all, and I know Fitzy brought up Luke Getsy. Dude, this honestly felt to me like what Brian Daboll did that, a few years ago with Daniel Jones, really just to neuter him, like get the ball out of your hands, first read or take off running. And a run first offense, really just a lot of design screens. It really just is like, okay, Caleb, we need you to play on schedule. We need you to play on time. The best way we can do that is to get you to throw design tunneled screens like every other freaking play or run the ball. And so for me, I think my biggest takeaway with this offense is that we're continuing to see the emergence of Rome Odunze. Since coming out of the bye, first read share has leaned in his direction. Like last week, he led the team with a 32% target share. So I think looking at the matchup this week and looking at a few of the things like in various particular weeks since the bye, he has led them in first read looks even before Thomas Brown taken over. So I think Rome, if you're looking at any Chicago pass catcher to really walk away from this and saying, who do I have the most faith in? Because it's tough to have faith in any of them. It's probably Rome Odunze.
Fitz, what do you think about this matchup for kind of the newish look Bears offense against Minnesota specifically?
It's going to be harder than the matchup against Green Bay. I'm not sure why, but new Packers defensive coordinator Jeff Hafley was playing a lot of soft coverages, big cushions at the line of scrimmage. I don't think we're going to see that out of Brian Flores. I think he's going to press and make things more difficult for Caleb.
Let's go to the next matchup here, D-Bro. Bucks at Giants. Daniel Jones is out as the Giants starting quarterback. What does Tommy Cutlets mean for their skill players in fantasy this week?
It's a push. I mean, Daniel Jones is barely league average. So I don't think you're getting a downgrade for anybody in this offense. I mean, if Brian Daboll can scheme things up around Daniel Jones, then he can scheme stuff up with Tommy Cutlets. So for me, it's a push for all parts and pieces. And to be honest, man, I think my biggest thing, and I just want to mention this real fast, is I just feel bad for Daniel Jones. Like, not only did he get demoted from being the starter, they got him all the way freaking down at QB4. Like, he's basically the practice squad, like, scout team quarterback right now. Like, I get the money and I get the reasons. I get all of that. That's still a really tough thing to do to a player on your team.
Fitz, what do you think we'll see from just kind of this offense as a whole under DeVito?
Yeah, I agree with D-Bro. Pretty much a lateral move. But lateral is not good in this case. DeVito made 6 starts for the Giants last year, only reached 200 passing yards in one of them. And I went back and looked to see if he favored any of the receivers. And obviously, like, things are different now. They have Malik Neighbors, did not have Malik Neighbors last year. Not really. There was one big Darius Slayton game. There were a couple decent Wan'Dale Robinson games. There was actually a 100-yard Jalen Hyatt game thrown in there with Tommy DeVito at quarterback. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe we just get a big dose of Tyrone Tracy now, and the Giants lean into the running game, which would be great because I think Tracy is terrific.
Where are you guys ranking Neighbors with DeVito?
Kind of conservatively, wide receiver 17 for me. I mean, like, he's averaged, I think, 55 yards per game since the first month of the season. It hasn't been all that pretty.
I've got him more aggressive. I'm wide receiver 11 right now. Just the Bucs secondary is terrible. I think he's a lock to see 10 plus targets.
Wait, to that point, Fitz, in the 4 games since he came back from the concussion stuff, 6.1 fantasy points, 10.6, 10.4, 7.8. Then he had the bye last week. So those 4 games, like, not super, that's in half PPR scoring, by the way. So it hasn't been the, like, superstar that he was in that stretch from, weeks 2 through 4, 23.7, 24.2, 17.1. It's looked different, somewhat with the head injuries, now obviously with just kind of with the state of the offense in general. Debra, where do you have Tracy ranked this week?
Oh, Tyrone Tracy. I love him. I think I have him as a top 12. I've got him at RB13. So where's ECR at on him right now?
ECR is that. Sorry, I have the receivers up. ECR has Tracy at 14, actually. So you're just one spot ahead.
I mean, I want to stay above ECR. That's a definite.
Okay. Let's go to Cowboys at Commanders, NFC East rivalry battle. Jaden Daniels and the Commanders passing game struggled mightily to push the ball downfield against the Philly D in week 11. A lot of their passing went to Austin Eckler, Zach Ertz. It was all near the line of scrimmage. I don't know. There's been some talk about, like, is he hurt? How hurt is he? Is it affecting his ability to run? Stuff like that. There's been some denials for some of the folks around Washington of how hurt he is. If you watch him, that seems kind of hard to believe. Debra, how do you like the Commanders' chances to bounce back against Dallas in terms of that downfield passing attack?
I mean, I'll lead this off with saying I don't think that Jaden Daniels is fully healthy. There's no way, shape, form, or fashion. Anybody that watched that game, and if you go back and watch this, it's funny because Fitzy and I were talking about this before we turned the mics on, but one specific play, and you could point to a bunch of different plays. It's not just that they kept everything around the line of scrimmage. He had a 3.7 ADOT last week. So let's not kid ourselves. This is not the same Jaden Daniels we've seen for the entirety of the rest of the season, but Noah Brown was running a crosser on one of those plays, and Jaden Daniels needed to grip it and rip it and push the ball to him, and he couldn't drive it, man. So, like, honestly, like, the velocity off of his hand, like, it looked very, I felt like I was watching Bryce Young. It was not good. And this is not me throwing shade at Jayden Daniels. I love the kid. I think he's immensely talented, but I don't think that he's anywhere close to healthy. And every time that you saw him on the sideline, I mean, they were patting his ribs. Like, he looked uncomfortable. He didn't look comfortable anytime he took off the run. I think we're going to see maybe not as exaggerated of an underneath passing attack as we did versus Philly, because Dallas is not pressuring the quarterback. Their secondary has sucked. Like, the team just looks like they've totally given up. So I think he's going to have more time in the pocket. I think we're going to see a better game from Terry McLaurin and the receivers in this one, but really more because of the matchup, not so much because I think Jayden Daniels is just going to be like pretty much the same guy we saw earlier part of the season, because I do not believe you, Dan Quinn. I do not believe that he's healthy right now.
He's currently QB3 in ECR. He's one of only 3 quarterbacks that Fantasy Pros has projected for over 20 points this week. Jalen Hurts and Lamar Jackson are the only guys ahead of him. Directly behind him, Justin Herbert, Kyler Murray, Bo Nix, Jared Goff, Patrick Mahomes. Given just the eye test fits from what we've seen out of Jayden Daniels, and not totally believing that he's fully healthy, and then coming off the game we saw last week, I know Dallas is bad, but do you think he deserves to be ranked as QB3 for the week?
I've got him QB4, and my suspicion on that is that I'm too high on him at QB4.
I've got him at QB6.
I mean, like, he has not had a rushing touchdown since week 3. He has been held to 209 or fewer passing yards in each of his last 3 games. He's topped 20 fantasy points just once in his last 5 games. Yes, it's a really good matchup. The Cowboys are allowing 8.3 yards per pass attempt. Only Jacksonville is giving up more. The Cowboys have the 5th worst opponent passer rating. But I don't know. Maybe I feel like I should have Bo Nix ranked ahead of him. And now look out. Jayden Daniels is only 6 fantasy points ahead of Bo Nix now on the season. Like, objects in your rear view mirror may be closer than they appear. Bo Nix is right on his bumper, and he has been like coming on fast lately. Entirely possible that he could pass him in the next week or 2.
Worth noting, the last 2 weeks in particular have been tough matchups. Like you mentioned, that stat fits only top 20 points once in the last 5 games. It's really once in the last 4, because one of those games was Carolina where he left early, so hard to kind of blame for that. But in those 4, the last 3 games ago was against the Giants. He was at 19.9 points, so he was close. That was the most comfortable matchup. The other 2, Pittsburgh and Philly, are tough matchups. So, I don't want to say it's not like he's struggling against very, low-hanging fruit. It's been struggling against good defenses, but it has been a struggle, to your point. I don't want to deny that. D-Bray, you said you had him ranked 6th?
Yeah, I've got him ranked 6th. And right now, just for everybody out there, Bo Nix right now on DraftKings plus 300 to be the offensive rookie of the year. Jayden Daniels is still heavy, like minus 400. So if you're going to make the bet on Bo Nix, it's probably about the time to do it.
Well, let's put a bow on the conversation with this. Where would you guys rank Jayden Daniels rest of season amongst quarterbacks?
Oh, I mean, he's definitely a QB1, only with the hope that he gets healthier. Right now, I've got him.
People don't tend to get healthier during the NFL season, right?
But it's his ribs. If he can not take huge hits.
Yeah.
I've got him at QB5, but I mean, if you were to tell me you wanted to push Brock Purdy, Bo Nix, maybe even Jordan Love, Kyler above him, like, I think I'm not going to push back on anybody if they would push him down to like the QB8, QB9 range.
What do you think, Fitz? He does have a bye coming up in 2 weeks.
Not a hypothetical question, Worm, because we at Fantasy Pros do rest of season rankings. You might not have known. No, I've got him QB7 rest of season.
I know we do rest of season rankings. I wanted to give you the opportunity to kind of go into your thought process.
Just giving you the business for him.
Please, so more still, all the time. Yes,
still a high level fantasy quarterback we think going forward, but we would really like to see him start running some more. The NFL season is rolling along and the contenders are separating from the pack. The one thing that hasn't changed this season, DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, is the number 1 place to bet touchdowns. Fade to the corner of the end zone, running back breaks through the line and gallops 60 yards to score. We don't care how they get them. We just want to bet on touchdowns, and DraftKings is the best place to do it. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple like a player scoring a touchdown Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your pick. After a terrific Week 11, we've got fewer obvious standout games in Week 12, but you know the NFL always delivers. The late afternoon slate in particular looks strong this week. The Cardinals laying a point in Seattle, Green Bay laying a point and a half at home against the Niners. We wrap up with the Harbaugh Bowl as well. Ravens are laying a field goal at the Chargers on Monday night football. Odds and lines are subject to change on those, but whichever game you bet, here's a reason for new customers to do a touchdown dance of their own. Bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Score big with DraftKings Sportsbook, the number one place to bet touchdowns. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code FantasyPros. That's code FantasyPros for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. All right, guys. Next game, Chiefs at Panthers. Which returning running back do we like better this week? Isaiah Pacheco or Jonathan Brooks? Again, a reminder for everybody that we are taping this a day early. So if there's been any kind of change to the status of these guys, obviously it's not official that Pacheco's coming back yet. But as of now, we're kind of anticipating that both guys will be on the field this week. So Debro, which running back do we like better this week who is returning, Pacheco or Brooks?
Can I say option C? Neither. I mean, if I'm picking one guy, it's one guy has arguably the worst matchup for running backs on the board in the entire league, and one guy has the best matchup. So if I'm picking one, it's Isaiah Pacheco, but I think both of these guys only play a handful of snaps. I'm not dinging Kareem Hunt this week at all. I think Pacheco might just see a handful of plays this week, but could he get a touchdown? Could he rip off a long run? It's possible, but I definitely do not want to play Brooks.
Fitz and I and Erickson talked about this on the Thursday show. Do you think that if Pacheco's on the field, the Chiefs probably don't need him to win this game, right? Given the matchup,
No,
they're
they don't
also
need
only have one
to.
loss this season. Like they're playing for the playoffs. They're playing for February only. So if he's on the field, is that a sign to you that he's totally cleared and we should expect a big game? Or do you think he would be on there if he's like not totally all the way, but let's start easing him back in?
I think you just ease him back in, man. Like, I mean, look at what they've done with a few of the other players and stuff. Like Juju came back last week. He didn't see a full-time workload. Now I know, like, you got a lot of parts of pieces in that passing attack to kind of like muddle through and stuff. So they didn't have to push him back into that. But the same thing here. Kareem Hunt's been, getting almost freaking 25 touches a game. There's nothing wrong with him. So you're not forced to have to push Pacheco immediately like right back into a high volume role. So I don't think they do.
Fitz, what do you think? Pacheco or Brooks this week?
Oh, it's Pacheco. I mean, let's take the guy who's been a successful workhorse in the NFL going up against a run defense that pretty much rolls out the red carpet for every running back they face. And then we've got Jonathan Brooks, a guy who's never taken an NFL snap going against a defense that lays down a bed of hot coals for every running back they face. Yeah, I got to go with Pacheco here. And I agree with Debro. The most likely scenario is that Pacheco gets a slow roll coming out of the gate here and probably plays like 15 snaps, gets 5 or 6 carries, 6 or 7 carries. But let's not rule out like the possibility that the Chiefs have deemed him good to go. He's their guy again. He gets 15 or 16 carries. Wouldn't totally shock me. Like, I don't think that's the most likely outcome, but that's a possibility. And I kind of want to factor for that in my ranking of Pacheco. So I don't know. We talked about this early on in the show, Worm, and I'm still sort of debating Pacheco versus like Javonte Williams, So
Wow. Okay.
yeah, I mean, I've got Pacheco, I think RB29. And because look, the guy can have a decent day, even if he only gets 7 carries against this defense. That's how bad the defense is. Wouldn't be surprised if they gave him a goal line carry or two to get him in the end zone in his return game. But yeah, I mean, I just, it's possible they give him a lot more work than we're expecting.
The other thing I'll throw out here real fast. What's the line on this game too, Worm?
It's like 11. Chiefs by
it's 11. Like that's the other thing that I think we need to discuss here too. Like, we do all think that the Chiefs run away with this game. If that happens early, like say they get a defensive score, the Chiefs score like 2 or 3 other times, like I think this game could get out of hand pretty quickly. And if that's the case, then maybe we see Pacheco kind of get bubble wrapped for the second half.
Like Fitz, do you agree with Debro in that like you'd rather just take option C, or do you actually like Pacheco as a start this week?
No, you can't like him when you're not sure that he's going to play more than a dozen
Yeah.
snaps. So I don't like him at all. But like I don't know about the game script thing. Maybe like the Chiefs have this bad habit of playing with their food when they've got easy
Fair.
matchups, and like
Fair.
I mean, we thought they were going to roll over the Raiders on Christmas Day last year, and look what happened.
Yep.
So I don't know about that. I just that is a big wild card. What the workload split between Pacheco and Hunt is going to be. I think we're all assuming it's going to be mostly Hunt with a dose of Pacheco, but maybe that's not the case.
I know we're not talking about the passing attack for this game too much. But I think this is a big get right game. This is a really good spot for Mahomes, Kelsey, and company to kind of light it up. So I'm actually more interested in their passing attack than their rushing attack.
Let's go to Lions at Colts. What did you guys think of the Colts offense and the return of Anthony Richardson last week? Obviously, he ran for 2 touchdowns. How does this version of the offense for Indy match up against Detroit? Fitz, I'll start with you.
Oh man, I was much more excited about this offensive reset than I was about the Bears offensive reset. So as with the Bears, there were shorter, quicker throws for Richardson, although not so close to the line of scrimmage as the sort of throws that Caleb was making. Earlier in the season, we were just seeing all these deep shots, low percentage throws to well-covered receivers downfield for Anthony Richardson. Just clearly wasn't working. If he made any such throws on Sunday, I missed them. I don't know if he had any deep throws to well-covered receivers. I don't think so. It just seemed like he was much more accurate on Sunday than he was earlier in the season, on target for most of the day. And the Colts used a lot of run pass options, RPOs, and that's about freaking time, because like that was what I
Thank
was
you.
hoping for all season from Shane Steichen in this offense. Like you have to design the offense around this dude's mobility. Like that is his best trait. Take advantage of it. And this time it just seemed like we got such a better game plan from Shane Steichen than we've been getting for most of the season when Anthony Richardson's been the quarterback, and a lot of play action too, which was nice to see. I just wonder, like, where was this earlier in the year? But better late than never, I guess.
Debro, what do you think?
Finally, we see a game plan out of Steichen that makes sense, man. Like I've hated a lot of the different stuff, and I'm not saying that Anthony Richardson has played well for most of the season, but like what Fitzy is talking about, when you're gearing up the difficulty of 10 and 11 on every single throw, everything's deep down the field, everything's a play action deep shot. Like, where are you giving Anthony Richardson easy answers to the test? Like, that hasn't been the case for most of the season, as well as you're asking, or up until this point, like Fitzy was talking about, Steichen was asking Richardson to play with one arm behind his back. It's like his best weapon out of all the weapons in his bag is his freaking legs. Let him use them. Let him run. And we saw that last week. So, like, to me, good things, man. Like, he was a QB4 in fantasy last week. I'm not saying that he's going to be a top 12 quarterback this week, and I'm not telling you that it's an easy matchup, but you can run the ball on the Lions to an extent. We've seen that over the last few weeks. And I think we're seeing better play calling that actually makes sense for the skill set of their quarterback. So Richardson, like, I don't have him ranked as a top 12 quarterback for this week, but what am I going to be shocked if he walks away again this week as a top 12 quarterback? Hell no.
We got a question from Mitch asking if we would rather start Anthony Richardson or Sam Darnold this week. Richardson's about 4 spots higher on ECR. The upside seems to be there with Richardson. Fitz, what do you think,
Yep.
Darnold or Richardson?
Yeah, Richardson. I think that Bears Vikings game has a total of under 40 points. It looks to be like a rock fight, and I would rather play Richardson and just gamble on the rushing upside and maybe a little passing upside too.
Debro?
Yep, I've got Richardson. There's a wide gap in my rankings between those two quarterbacks. I've got Darnold at QB 21, and I've got A-Rich at QB 15, so just barely outside the top 12.
Let's go to Broncos at Raiders. Bo Nix, QB7 in ECR this week. We mentioned it a little bit earlier. QB10 in our rest of season rankings. See, Fitz, I did know we had those. This comes off this comes off the heels of his best game as a pro for Bo Nix when he threw for 4 touchdowns and 300 yards against Atlanta. Are we 100% bought in on Nix as a strong fantasy quarterback rest of the season, or is there still any cause for hesitation, Debro?
No, no, there's not cause for hesitation. And this is, I mean, I'm going to own some L's here, man. As a person who, if people want to go back and pull up the receipts, our draft stream of when Denver drafted Bo Nix in the first round, I think my first reaction is I just started laughing my butt off. I was like, oh, I was so dismissive. And dang it, Sean Payton still got the magic, dude. Still has the magic. Shouldn't have questioned him as much as I did specifically. Like, I was not a fan of Nix as a prospect, and I'm wrong. I have been proven wrong, man. Like, he has been awesome since week 5. The QB5 in fantasy points per game since week 5 amongst 36 quarterbacks. He is 7th in passer rating, 7th in CPOE, and he is 6th in fantasy points per game. At this point, he's shown it enough times. And look, here's the thing, guys. He hasn't even been running the last 2 to 3 weeks either. So he's got multiple outs, man. No, we don't need to sit here and worry about it. Yeah, Bo Nix is for real.
Fitz?
I've mostly bought into this. He has quickly gotten a lot better as an NFL passer. So he's averaging 6.4 yards per attempt, which isn't a great number, but let's look at how that's evolved. Over his first 4 games, Nix averaged 4.8 yards per attempt. Yikes, that's a pretty alarmingly bad number. But over his last 7 games, 7.4 yards per attempt, which is like rock solid NFL starter good. 4 interceptions in his first 2 games, only 2 interceptions in his last 9 games for a rookie quarterback. Really impressive. 65.5 completion percentage. He's accurate. He runs aggressively. So yeah, I mean, I've bought in. There are going to be bumps along the way. He's still a rookie after all, but there is something to be said. And Debro, maybe you can forgive yourself for whiffing on him with the prospect evaluation. There is something to be said. And we saw this with Brock Purdy, for a dude who makes a lot of starts in college against Power 5 competition. And like, Purdy came in and he was not overwhelmed at all by NFL defenses. And I think it's been kind of the same thing with Bo Nix, who, struggled in the SEC, went to the Pac-12, sort of refound himself out there. But this is just a guy who's made a lot of starts, and maybe this is the reason it took, or has taken, Anthony Richardson a while to get used to the NFL. Like, this guy did not make a lot of starts in college. So, like, he has been thrown into the deep end of the pool, whereas, Bo Nix has sort of waded in.
Yeah, and I think 2 big things, like, for these rookie quarterbacks, I think we always go back to not only the ecosystem that they get thrown into, but kind of going back to the Anthony Richardson conversation, good play callers, man. Like, not only do these kids need to stay aggressive and know what they're seeing on the NFL field, but also the part or piece of they have to be put in good situations, like, in the sense of, like, are you giving them outs? Are you giving them easy answers to the test? Are you stacking the deck against them more, and honestly helping the defense by designing an offense that doesn't, 1, either cater to their strengths, or 2, give them outs when they see pressure, when they see man coverage, when they see different things on the field. And Peyton is, I'm so curious what this offense looks like when we walk into week 1 next year. Like, what do they do in the draft? Like, getting a running back, getting other players in this offense that actually fit the system, and getting him somebody outside of Cortland Sutton on a weekly basis he could depend on. Things are looking up in Denver.
Growing up, basketball was never near the top of my list of favorite sports. I always preferred baseball, and then as I got older, it became football. But once I was in college at Maryland, I completely fell in love with the atmosphere at college basketball games, the energy, the passion, the noise, the chills. There's no fan experience in the world quite like a high-level college hoops game. And now that I'm past my days as a student, when I need basketball tickets, I turn to Game Time. Game Time has this new feature called Game Time Picks, which filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats. It makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. The list of my favorite features on the Game Time app is too long to read everything, but here are some standouts for me personally. I love the Game Time Picks curation, obviously, especially since I can use it for not just sports, but concerts, comedy, theater, and more. I also love the all-in pricing, so there are no surprise fees at checkout. Nothing in the world more infuriating than thinking I know what I'm about to spend on a purchase, then getting hit with a surprise fee at the last second. That doesn't happen with Game Time. Plus, I also appreciate the seat views to get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you commit to buying. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code FantasyPros for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code FANTASYPROS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time.
If anybody wants a fun Friday night activity, pull up this show, and on a weekly basis, every time that Worm makes a Ravens or a Maryland reference, take a drink. You'll have a good night, promise.
I mentioned Maryland on the show besides the ad read.
You just did.
Besides the ad read, I'm not on the
Did he have an outer
show.
body experience and forget that he mentioned Maryland right there?
No, I didn't forget. I said besides the ad read. The read is about going to basketball games. That's where I fell in love with going to basketball games. Was at Maryland. It's relevant to.
Fitz, you're the impartial third party here. I mean, am I wrong?
Yeah, I don't want to torture the listeners with more discussion of Big Ten basketball. Worm and I can save that for after the show. So let's just move on.
The listeners probably didn't even hear it. They probably skipped through the ad.
I love how you just gave the most sidestep answer ever. That was well done, Fitzy.
I will not apologize for mentioning Maryland in an ad read. All right, Cardinals at Seahawks. Jackson Smith-Njigba did not suffer at all with the return of DK Metcalf, leading Seattle in targets with 11, catches with 10, and yards at 110. How comfortable are we going back to him as a top option after seeing him with a big game while Metcalf was on the field, D-Bro?
Very comfortable. Looking at him right now, I've got him ranked as wide receiver 15 for the week, and I've got DK Metcalf one spot ahead of him. I'm almost to the point where looking at the coverage matchup, I'm going to flip their ranking because it definitely leans in the favor of Jackson Smith-Njigba. Arizona has leaned more too high heavy, and he's been the go-to receiver, JSN has, versus too high. Seattle, when they face too high, JSN leads the team with a 23.5% target share. So I like JSN a ton in this matchup, and yeah, I think he's going to out-target DK Metcalf this week.
Fitz, what are you doing with JSN?
Yeah, I've got him wide receiver 19, so I'm pretty high on him too. D-Bro's got me outflanked there, but I still think he's pretty close to a must start. Like, we are seeing the second-year breakout, and it's pretty exciting, and what we were waiting for was for JSN to do it while sharing a field with DK Metcalf. He had only had one good game in games that Metcalf had played. He had that smash game against the Rams a couple of weeks ago where DK was out, and he had 2 touchdowns and 180 yards. Last week, DK comes back, 11 targets, 10 catches for JSN, 110 yards. So I'm buying into what looks like a year 2 breakout. Like, this is the sort of production we were expecting from a guy who, as a 19-year-old sophomore at Ohio State, had a 95 catch, 1,600-yard season while sharing targets with Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. So, like,
amazing what happens when you don't have Shane Waldron to deal with, huh, Fitzy?
Oh, that's a good point, man. It's starting to look pretty good here. I was wondering, though, like, in fairness, like, when we were not seeing anything from him over the first half of the regular season, I was concerned, like, maybe this guy maybe he isn't it. But yeah, this has been a pretty satisfying last couple of weeks.
I think we've seen his role kind of change too, like since week 5, and or since week 6, like, just pulling this up. Through the first 5 weeks of the season, his ADOT only eclipsed 8 yards in one of those first 5 weeks. Since week 6, his ADOT has not dropped below 7 in any game, and he's only dropped below 8.5 in one game. So I think the other thing about it is Seattle has said, you know what? you could do a lot of other things besides us just feeding you underneath targets. Like, he can win down the field, and we've seen that, and that's really given another life to JSN over the last few weeks.
All right, Debo, I don't want to like put you on blast though. You did just recently trade away JSN in that Dynasty League we referenced. So I bring it up again, not to put you on blast, but just kind of ask, like, is that a sign for kind of how you feel about him long term?
No, so outside of last week, there have been some concerning things, like if you look at separation scores, route win rate, things like that. The other part about this is that, like, I've got JSN in so many different leagues. I honestly, a player that I didn't, and just for full transparency, it's a rebuilding team, and I traded for Ladd McConkey. I don't have Ladd on a lot of different dynasty squads, and I love Ladd right now. Like, I think he is going to go scorched earth the second half of the season. So I look at Ladd as, especially on rebuilding teams, much as just his general prospects, I look at trading for him at that point. I felt like his dynasty value is going to do nothing but go up. So for that squad, as well as just the player, I really wanted to get Ladd on another dynasty team.
Worm, are you really questioning the 4-dimensional chess Debro is playing in our company dynasty league?
How many top 5 picks has he traded away and then ended up having a rebuilding year that season since we started? It feels like every season.
And I've got a lot of really good young players. It's not my fault you don't want to trade for James Cook. It's not my fault that I trade Jalen Hurts and then I get Jordan Love and a first back. I mean,
yeah, you're still in last place. This is all I can say.
Keep talking your smack. I'm going to sit here and rub your face in it next year in this league. I can't wait.
49ers at Packers. Fitz, Christian Watson had by far his best game of the season against Chicago. 4 catches, 150 receiving yards, top 10 finish at the position, despite not getting into the end zone. So, Pat, what do we expect from him in this week's follow-up?
No idea. He has one of the widest weekly ranges of possible outcomes of any wide receiver in the league. Just a ton of big play potential here, which we saw last week. Like, he is tall and fast. His ball skills are very underrated. Like, he made a couple of spectacular catches last week against the Bears. The problem is that Watson does not get the sort of target counts that lend themselves to week in, week out consistency. Even if we exclude the game earlier this season against the Vikings, where he got hurt and left after just 9 snaps, he's averaging 4.3 targets a game. And it does seem like he's sort of clearly moved past Dontavian Wicks, which is a good thing. For a while, those two were kind of splitting snaps. And maybe he's going to start to outrank Romeo Doubs as far as earning targets from Jordan Love. But, it's just, he is a hard guy to peg week in, week out. I'm sort of splitting the baby this week. I've got him at like wide receiver 34. So, but he could finish wide receiver 8 or he could finish wide receiver 73.
D-Ro?
Oh, we're going to talk about another talented player that seems to have found his way onto my dynasty roster in that league. Interesting. Huh. Okay, fine. Let's discuss him. Dude, I just want to see, and I was texting Fitzy on Sunday because every big play that Watson made, we were texting back and forth, and I just want to see Watson healthy, Jordan Love healthy. I think if we see that, the rest of it can take care of itself, man. And again, if you're looking just for talent, I don't think any of us should question Christian Watson. Like, since week 6, amongst 124 qualifying wide receivers, he ranks 5th in separation, and he ranks 6th in route win rate. I'm still flummoxed. I'm like, Fitzy, like, on a weekly basis, who's going to get the ball? Like, looking at coverage data and all these different things. I just want to make a bet on the talent of Christian Watson. And I know this sounds like a very tired diatribe. Like, we've said this on this show. We've done this dance before, but it doesn't mean that it's wrong, man. Like, how many different iterations, right when we think the Green Bay Packers are getting healthy, or Watson is healthy and Love is healthy, that we see like a wrench get thrown into the freaking gears, where it's like, oh, one of them is now dinged up. Oh, one of them is missing time. I just want to see them healthy. And considering talent, I think we can see that second half ascension for Christian Watson, because, and again, looking at just this game, it's tough to kind of parse through all the numbers because certain guys have been healthy. Love has been healthy. He hasn't. Watson's been healthy. He hasn't. But just looking at the coverage aspect of it, I mean, since week 4, 49ers are running cover 3, cover 4 on almost 57% of the defensive snaps. Against that since week 6, with Watson healthy, Love back, all those types of things, Watson has 3.9 yards per route run against those coverage types. So, like Fitzy talked about, right now I've got him ranked as wide receiver 40. I think you can make a case as anywhere from him being a wide receiver 3 and ranking him over Jaden Reed and as the top Green Bay guy to ranking him as the bottom Green Bay guy. Like, the range of outcomes is so astronomically wide for him. But if you need a ceiling play this week, yeah, Watson has ceiling.
I want to ask about Jauan Jennings on the other side of this. At least 7 catches and at least 90 yards in both games since he returned to the lineup healthy. Is he more of a high ceiling play, Debro, or more of a high floor option this week against the Packers?
I think both. I think his floor is crazy high, and I think his ceiling's high, man. Like, I think he's playing the Brandon Ayuk plus role in the sense that if you look at the last few years, how the 49ers have attacked different coverages, it's been really easy to kind of suss out who is going to get the volume on a weekly basis. It's like, okay, they play a single high defense, it's Brandon Ayuk week. If they play a 2 high defense, then it's Kittle week, or it's Debo week, or it's both of them week. What we've seen out of Jennings, I mean, he's been awesome against both. He's probably going to see a lot more 2 high coverage this week. So I think Debo is going to have a really good game, but I think Jennings is going to be massively involved, man. Like, amongst all their wide receivers, minimum 40 routes, Jennings leads the team in target per route run rate against 2 high, 29%, and he has 3.2 yards per route run against the coverage. So I think Jennings is going to smash yet again this week.
Fitz, what do you think? I was looking at the stat actually as we were doing this show. Michael Florio from NFL Fantasy tweeted this. Wide receivers averaging 3 yards per route run, this minimum 50 routes. A.J. Brown, Nico Collins, Rashee Rice, Puka Nacua, Jauan Jennings. So he's been, I mean, obviously I'm not breaking any ground, but
he's been
playing
awesome.
spectacularly this year.
Yeah, he's made 4 starts this year, and he's had no fewer than 88 yards in any of his 4 starts. So I'll vote for floor, but as Debro said, you could make the case for floor or ceiling because, well, we saw the ceiling in that game earlier in the year where Debo was out and he had 175 yards and 3 touchdowns. So, yeah, I mean, Jennings is averaging 111.8 receiving yards in his starts for the 49ers this year. So, yeah, I mean, like a star is born. And here's this guy who was just this seemed like a spare part to us in the fantasy community to up until this season. And now, I mean, he is a force to be reckoned with.
Question real fast, guys. Because this is percolating in my brain. Does the ascension of Jauan Jennings make Debo expendable this offseason with Pearsall on the roster? What do you think, Fitzy?
Yeah, I mean, it does seem like there's a logjam that needs to be broken up. It does seem hard to think that they would roll into next season with all of Debo, Ayuk, and we know Ayuk's not going anywhere with the big contract, Jennings, and Pearsall.
Before we get to the key question for Sunday night's matchup, which is Eagles at Rams, I want to ask you guys about your Uber Eats Sunday night meals of the week. We just did LA last week, so we're going to lose the away team this time. Debro, what must-order food gets you reaching for your Uber Eats app for great game day deals when you think of Philadelphia?
Dude, a roast pork sandwich. I was looking at the description of this online and I was like, oh my Lord, man. Like some sharp provolone over that. Oh, heaven.
I noticed, by the way, there's a theme with all of ours. It's a lot of meat coming to us from Philly. Fitz, what's yours?
Yeah, this will appease some of the people who gave me grief in the comments on YouTube who roasted me for mentioning a chopped salad last week. And one guy was like, a chopped salad in Vegas. I'm like, it wasn't Vegas, dude. We were talking about Los Angeles. Of course, I'm not eating a chopped salad in Las Vegas. But yeah, I'm gonna stick with the pork motif. Philly is my kind of town, man. I'm a big pork guy. A pork roll. Like if I were in Philadelphia and hungover for any reason, like holiday party or something like that, I could totally see myself ordering a couple of pork rolls from Uber Eats to help chase that hangover away.
Speaking of Vegas, I mean, maybe we're just foreshadowing, but I kind of foresee in my mind's eye a liquid diet in
Yeah.
Vegas for Fitzy
I was
coming
gonna
in.
make
I don't know.
a joke about like if you're spending time in Philly, you better be hungover. I actually really like Philadelphia. I grew up a few hours away, and it was a
Oh
fun spot to
gosh,
go up for a
Mayor's
game
gonna
or
love this
whatever.
section of the show. Go Birds.
It's not like my favorite city in the world, but like I do enjoy Philly. It's a Philly cheesesteak. Like that's the correct answer. I'm the type of person, as we've discussed in this show, who doesn't want like onions mixed into stuff or something kind of added on fixins, but just like a great Philly cheesesteak with the meat and the cheese and the bread, which I've had many times, as plain as you can make it, and whatever sauce they want to throw on there, fantastic. Like again, I'm not going out on a limb there with Philly cheesesteak, but
Yeah,
a delicious
Worm,
meal.
before we get off Philly foods, I got to ask, have you had scrapple?
No, I don't know what that is.
It's like some sort of weird breakfast meat that they roll it in oats or there's some sort of coating to that. It's like a breakfast thing in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
I've never had it, but
Never had it. Description looks very interesting. It
yeah,
was like a
it is a
cornbread kind of,
hardcore
yeah.
Philly thing. Philly's an interesting eating town. Like they have
Mhm.
some unique specialties. I mean, like that roast pork sandwich, like they put
Yeah.
broccoli rabe and roasted red peppers on the sandwich, like
Mhm.
really unique.
And none of us even mentioned hoagies, man. I mean, whew, lots of stuff.
I do love a good hoagie. I worked at one point the year
I
I was
thought you were going to take hoagie.
the
To
year I
be
was a
honest.
baseball scout. I lived in Copley, Pennsylvania, and right around the corner next to like kind of the building we were operating out of was this place, Melanders, I forget how they pronounced it, but they made these massive hoagies, and I would get them for lunch, and they would last you for days. They were so good. I do love a good hoagie. Yeah, this scrapple looks great. Traditional mush of fried pork scraps and trimmings combined with cornmeal and wheat flour. Like, sign me up. Like, the
Yeah.
other thing I was gonna pick, if you guys had taken a food I wanted, a Yingling. I enjoy a good Yingling to
Yeah.
go along with the
Good beer.
meal. Most of the time, very
As long
Pennsylvania
as it's
beer.
not an IPA, I can get down with it.
Yeah, there you have it. Our Uber Eats Sunday night meals of the week. We got pork rolls. We got Philly cheesesteak. We've got anything meat and bread and cheese. We got for Philly this week. Uber Eats has the best game day deals all season long. Order now for game day. Key question in this game, guys: since week 7, Devonta Smith has been really hit or miss for fantasy. In the last 5 games, he has 2 games inside the top 12 at receiver and 3 games outside the top 50. Fitz, which kind of game will it be this week?
Oh man, I love the player. I think Devonta Smith is one of the best route runners in the league, but I tend to be more of a pessimist than an optimist about him right now, just because the passing volume is so buttoned up right now for the Eagles. Since the start of October, Jalen Hurts is averaging 21.8 pass attempts per game. The Eagles are the run heaviest team in the league, and Devonta Smith is the number 2 receiver on this team behind AJ Brown. So the Rams aren't a bad matchup. Devontae could always pop off for a big game, hit on a couple of plays, but I've got him ranked wide receiver 24. So I'm being pretty conservative with my ranking of him this week.
Debro, where do you rank Smith?
Um,
And by the way, I'm
got
pulling up ECR right now. He is wide receiver 21.
I think I'm dropping him. I've got him at wide receiver 22, but I'm going to drop him to 24. I might drop him a little bit further. I mean, like, he's living in a range where, like, I would rather play Calvin Ridley. I would rather play Marvin Harrison Jr. I would rather play Tank Dell. So, kind of foreshadowing. It's not that, again, everything that Fitzy highlighted is absolutely correct. It has nothing to do with the talent. It has everything to do with the passing volume. Like, he's gotten squeezed, man. And the other part about this is not just, okay, it's a good matchup for Devonta Smith. We could talk about that. Okay, that's great. That's grand. It's also a fantastic matchup for AJ Brown, and the Rams cannot stop tight ends, and they've been more of, I mean, the run defense has had issues. So I think that if this was a tougher matchup for like Dallas Goedert, then I would feel a little bit better about volume getting pushed to Devonta Smith. But I mean, Dallas Goedert, I think, is set up for a really, really strong game. And it's not like Devonta Smith has a lot of outs, man. It's not like he's been getting used in the red zone. Like, since week 3, he has 1 red zone target. So even if we want to say, well, it's the volume, but maybe he scores a touchdown, dude, even him scoring a touchdown is a slim proposition, like, So that might not even save his day. It just really comes down to the matchup and can he bust a big play? If he doesn't do that, we're likely disappointed this week.
Now, we usually talk about Monday Night Football. Debro has made it clear I'm not allowed to talk about the Ravens, despite the fact that we're a fantasy
And yet
show.
they make the show sheet.
We're a fantasy show, and they're the best offense in football. Am I allowed to talk about Ravens Chargers, Debro?
It's your defense. You need new talking points. It's your defense every single week.
Because it's
every
true.
Week.
Also,
I'm not saying it's not true, but you need new material.
Also, we try and pick the kind of like the best games of the week. I mean, like to a degree, I want to pick the fantasy relevant ones, but I will give an extra edge to a really strong matchup. Their schedule has been ridiculous. They only play in fun, exciting games. So I'm not going to apologize for talking about them on a fantasy show when their offense is this good. We are going to talk about Ravens at Chargers, a classic kind of start everyone type of game. Fitz, which players are we fading in this one, since I think everybody's kind of lean is going to be to start as many as possible in this one?
Yeah, I mean, J.K. Dobbins against the Ravens run defense that ranks 5th in DVOA and has given up the 3rd fewest rushing yards to running backs. And yeah, I'm not all that excited about starting any of the Baltimore pass catchers besides Zay Flowers. I think you could play Rashad Bateman in a pinch if you're getting squeezed by the 16 bye week. Mark Andrews is an okay start at tight end. But really Dobbins is the only guy I would say is kind of a fade for me. And even there, I've got him ranked like running back 22 or whatever, just based on volume. It's just that I wish he were used more as a pass catcher. Like he's gotten a little bit of usage there, but it's just, I don't see him having a big day on the ground against the Ravens.
Debro, what do you think? I mean, again, it's the type of game where people are going to be inclined to just get as much exposure as they can. But is there anybody that you are personally fading?
I think the first name that people need to hear is exactly one that Fitzy led off with is J.K. Dobbins. The one that I'm going to go down the list for that I think a lot of people are going to have to start, and I'm telling you, I would be considering streaming options over him, is Mark Andrews. And I know that name might surprise some people, but the Chargers are legitimately the worst matchup you can have for a tight end right now. They are the only defense in the NFL that has yet to allow a receiving touchdown to a tight end.
I didn't know that.
To a tight end. Yeah. The only defense. There are a lot of defenses that have held tight ends to one touchdown. They are the only defense that has yet to allow a single touchdown, and they have allowed the sixth fewest fantasy points per game to opposing tight ends. So Andrews, I understand that a lot of people are going to have to start him. I get that. Looking at streaming options, like I know I'm going to sound crazy for this, but telling me the best matchup on the board, like if you need ceiling this week, I wouldn't push back against somebody by playing JT Sanders over Mark Andrews.
I knew that was the name that was coming. I mean, the Chiefs do
worst matchup on the board for tight ends, best matchup on the board for tight ends.
Yeah, the Chiefs smother perimeter receivers and get crushed by tight ends, so it makes sense.
And the Chargers, they haven't faced a murderer's row of tight ends, but they have faced Bowers, Kelsey, Ed McBride this year. So they have had some games against some really good tight ends, and
all the Cincy guys didn't get in last week either. That's why I told people to must bench Mike Gesicki last week.
That's a great set. Do you think, Debro, there's any credence to the idea of like the Chargers will want to kind of help either Dobbins or Gus or both get touchdowns against their former team?
Yeah, I mean, I think Dobbins definitely, especially, comeback narrative. He's had a great season and stuff like that. The other part about this, man, like you just want to root for a team with Harbaugh. Like Jim Harbaugh's done such a good job with the Chargers, man. That team, like from every video clip we've seen, like they freaking love him, dude. Like I want to see them win. Again, like it being the Harbaugh Bowl. Is this the first time we've seen both Harbaughs play each other since the Super Bowl? Is that right?
They played on Thanksgiving night one year. I don't remember what year that was. Was that after the Super Bowl?
I just started getting like memories and flashbacks of the freaking Super Bowl, man.
Yeah, I mean that's obviously the big one. I forget what year it was that they played on because there was that Thursday night Thanksgiving game that they played, and I don't remember if it was before or after the Super Bowl. I'm trying to look it up here, but I think, unless I'm totally forgetting one, I think those are the only two times they've played. was okay. Yeah, so that was before the Super Bowl. It looks like that was 2011. Obviously,
Yeah,
the
so Super
was
Bowl was
after
the last
2010.
time they
So,
met.
so I think that is the most recent time. Yeah, that's
Interesting.
it's. I mean, it's always you said it's always you always want to root for the team with Harbaugh. You didn't specify which one at first, so I'm going to
I
co-sign
know.
that. That
Well,
it's you for Team
dude, to
Harbaugh.
be honest, I was like, which one is it? It's like when you bring up the last name of Carr, you're like, is it David or Derek? Is it David or
Yeah.
Derek? I can't remember.
Yeah, it feels when you root for one of the teams, it's like you're obviously much more attuned to it. And but I do hear people all the time say Jim when they mean John or vice versa, and
Yep.
it's always fun. This is gonna be a great game, though. I think this. We were talking about this on the Thursday show, also, D-Bro. I think that this is going to I loved the Ravens Steelers under, loved it last week. I adore the over in this one. It's at 51.
Oh, I think this game's going over
right now.
Yeah, I mean,
I think this
you
is
hit the nail on the
absolute
head last week about
shootout.
Lamar and Steelers and stuff like that. Like, I think this game is going to go over.
It was
I
my
think this
favorite
game
bet of
is
the
gonna be
week
a
was
ton of
under,
points.
and the under basically clinched in the first quarter. I mean, you could just tell watching Ravens Steelers where that was going. But best of luck to everybody this week in whatever bets you make or start set decisions you have. Hopefully this is a really fun slate, a couple of standout games, like I mentioned. So I really appreciate everybody tuning in. And again, if anything happens Thursday night, sorry we missed it. We had to tape early this week. But for D-Bro and Fitz, I'm Ryan Wormeli. Thanks everybody for tuning in again. We'll see you again next week.